hilarious thing about in their plays was, because at the Finborough we do rediscoveries of work that's fallen off the radar. We have a policy that we don't do anything that's been done in London in the past 25 years, and it's work from 1850. So that means we did a beautiful production of The Northerners, which is, about the, what were they called? I'm Australian, not British, but the guys in Manchester who smashed up the looms. They were Luddites, but they had a specific name. But yeah, they smashed up the spinning jennies and burned down the factories, and beautiful, lovely, wonderful sort of proto-socialist kind of stuff. But Neil had discovered this Graham Greene play called The Potting Shed, which nobody had seen in 50 years, and he had a desperate desire to put on this Emily Williams play, Accolade, and A Northern Star, which had never been done. And there were just a bunch of plays that had been cooking for a while in his inbox that were plays that he really loved and was attached to. And he announced we were doing this rediscovery season. And of course I'm sitting there full of all my bile and rage about what's going on in Australia. It was like, you do realise there are no female playwrights here. And he was like, actually I didn't. And I went, gender blind, somebody's having a bit of gender blindness. And he went, I'm up to the task, let's do a female season. And I was like, really? Like, all I had to do was point that out. And he was like, yeah, hell yeah, like, this is ridiculous. If we're going to do 6 men, like, let's do 6 shows by women. And Colleen Murphy's on attachment as one of our writers in residence. We have 2 sort of writing strands. We have the writers in residence who work with Neil on sort of long-term projects that are going to go straight into production, and then we have my writers on development who are playwrights who we really like but are still sort of coaching into the kind of plays we think that they're capable of writing. So that's a system that actually works really well, because it means we've got writers in the theatre all the time and being part of that process. And so he had Colleen Murphy on attachment, and she had written 3 wildly different plays, and his idea was that, to give her a retrospective. She's a living female playwright, and a retrospective is an interesting thing to do, to look at 3 very, very different plays that she's done. Polly Penn is a composer, and you get so few female composers in music theatre. We haven't done music theatre since Me and Juliet. So he had that project, and he was like, this is something that we can do. Then got the rights to Fen, which is a Carol Churchill play that hasn't been seen in years and years and years and years. And also Naomi Wallace's And Diane's Silence. And Naomi Wallace actually had her break at the Finborough, and this play was something that we showed in our Vibrant season last year when we do our new writing sort of showcase, and had a really good response. So it means that we've got this all-female season, and with diversity within that as well. A rediscovery of a great British play by a female writer, a brand new piece of writing which is challenging and exciting, a female composer with a new musical, and then a retrospective of a Canadian female playwright who isn't known to British audiences. So that's great. Like, that's programming that I'm so proud of, and want to scream with a bullhorn, look what we're doing, we're taking this seriously, and away from the idea that women's writing is a genre, and that it's got this sort of this implication that there's a stylistic conservatism to women's writing, like all we're going to do is write about our wombs, or like knit words about, I don't know, empowerment, or I don't even know how the mind that thinks that women are going to do the same stylistic thing. I don't understand how that mind works. But constantly you hear it in the media again and again and again. Male programmers saying, oh yeah, well, it's this reason we can't do it, this reason, and everybody's equal except they're not, because we continually overprogram men. And yet we've got a season that's really vast and different, even within that sort of small space. And it's fantastic because it also compares to the perspectives and the positions taken by the male playwrights who we've been rediscovering, Graham Greene, Emily Williams. You know what I mean? And it's exciting to have that sort of comparison.
Sounds very good. I should definitely have to come to some.
Oh, it's going to be fun. I'm going to miss it because I'm going to be back in Australia, like fighting the good fight. But only I could be literary manager at a theatre that does actually have a women's season. That occurs when I get a fellowship to go to another country to write plays. It's like, why is this happening? But I'm getting ready to kick off. I'm doing me and another Australian playwright called Patricia Cornelius are going head to head with the boys at a panel at the Wheeler Centre in Victoria, talking about this issue. and I'm really going to kick off because I have nothing to lose at home. My career and life have moved here. I earn my money from writing books, and it's one of those things that it's going to take a few kamikaze missions to destroy the infrastructure of just sexist crap in the theatre community.
Yeah. If you had any advice for aspiring female playwrights, maybe what would your 2 key items of advice be?
Read as many plays as you can and go to the theatre as much as you can and be referent. A theatrical education is only ever going to do you favours, and to be referent with the dominant schools of critical thought, that sophisticates and shapes your writing. Like, you should be able to rattle off a number of theoretical as well as literary influences. It's like wanting to start a rock band without ever listening to a song. For a lot of people, it's always because obviously I have this conversation with a lot of would-be novelists, and I'm like, you do understand you have to read books. Like, that's the business we're in. And the same thing is, you've got to go to the theatre and know what's going on there. And the best thing you can do is be aware of the kind of programming. I would also say cynically change your name, like gender neutralise your name. Like, that's number one. And try not to get your photo taken, for a while. And that is really constructive and good advice, I think. Stay neutral and let the work speak, because you are going to be dealing with prejudice. I mean, I know that sounds like really... It's not... I'm not saying give yourself a man's name. Just... Is that good advice to be giving? I don't know. Anyway, my really strong piece of advice is to go to the theatres that you think will be interesting. If you're not excited by what they're programming at the Hampstead, that's not the theatre to send your play to. If you're not excited by what they're programming at the Bush, that's not the theatre to send your play to. The idea that you're just going to, send all of your plays out and see which ones fall, that's not sensible. It's having the play and having the conviction that you have written something, and that's worthwhile in itself. Because boys don't think, I wonder if it's any good. Boys think, yeah, hell, I've just written a play. It's like, I've just got a sandcastle, I've just got a Tonka truck. I have 40,000 years of patriarchal achievement. Hey, I'm standing on the shoulders of some pretty big giants here, even if they are kicking women in the face. But certainly, it's finding the theatres that you will love. It's a quote from my dinner with Andre. I want to find some women who love the theatre but haven't yet found a theatre to love. Find that theatre to love and concentrate on that. I mean, that was the Sarah Kane story. It was that he was a woman obsessed with the Royal Court. She loved it there. And, there's a hilarious story about her, like, getting into fights with people there about, what are you doing? Why is this happening and the rest of it? And obviously that's where she found her voice and her calling. I mean, a theatre company exists as a school of taste. We're not bureaucrats with a mission to represent different aesthetics. Yes, we should be representing different communities, of course, and yes, we should be speaking truth to power. I mean, personally, that's the function of art. But certainly those, the little stylistics are the things that you either connect to or you don't. What tastes pleasant to you. If you don't like bananas, don't eat bananas, And that, I think, is something that it took me years to work out, that, you had to find a theatre to really love and to really champion, because that becomes the theatre for you. And do your research. Like, if you're writing a letter, research who you're sending it to. Know what the programming has been. Because, I mean, I got a beautiful play the other day that I really liked, really well written, and Women Writer too, which was so frustrating, because it was like, we put this play on 3 years ago. We have done this subject matter and it's too specific for us to repeat. And I had to send her a letter, thank you for submitting to the Finborough Theatre, where I can't do a personalised response. But the other thing too is to never get disheartened by rejection. It's never personal. And there are lots of plays that I really love that I have to reject because we've done a similar play on similar themes, because, it doesn't fit with our current season, because I love it but Neil doesn't and he's the artistic director and that's the beginning and the end of it, or, because we have somebody who's developing something similar, or because we think it's a great play but it's not what we do, it's better for the Bush, the Hampstead, the Royal Court. And certainly since I've been working what I call this side of the line, I felt a lot more comfortable about rejections because, the prime directive of any theatre company is to raise enough money to fix the hole in the roof. Like, And if we can't program something that is going to get a return that's enough to keep us in business, we just can't do it. You know, and that's the thing, is to just, you know, retarget, re-strategize, get back out there and keep going. You know, and the networking thing is really important. Like, if you get a meeting with a theatre company and they say, oh yeah, well, you know, what do you like? You have to have an answer to that question. Who influences you? You have to have an answer to that question, because they're all the decisions we're making about where do they belong, where do they fit in, what can they do, can we work with this person, do we speak the same language, we're an under-resourced theatre, do I have to like mentor you one-to-one, do I have time to do that if I'm reading 16 scripts a day? You know what I mean? And certainly for female playwrights, for any playwright, get in on the actual physical production of the theatre. You know, if you're in a remote community and there's an Amdram company, go, you know, learn about the lights, learn about the stage, learn about, you know, all the... I mean, there are always big jokes in the theatrical community about actors being stupid and, they're all done with just pretty blah, blah, blah. But actors tend to write brilliant plays because even if they're not literary, they have brilliant stagecraft. And a working actor has been in how many texts? You know, like, actors are usually incredibly well read because that's what they've got to do, or they don't get paid. And yet a lot of people who want to be writers don't seem to work that out. You know, and that's frustrating. So there's some practical tips. Never ever send an insult to anybody. Be nice to everybody. Do not drink alcohol at theatrical events, which seems like a no-brainer because it looks like a social event. I know it looks like a social event. It's not. It's like drinking at work. Don't do it. You know, another massive mistake from my youth. Let me tell you what I think about your fucking blood. You know, don't do it.